You're lying in bed, the room is dark, the door is closed, you are alone, and yet something in the back of your skull is screaming that you are not. Your eyes scan the doorway, your skin tightens, your heart picks up a half-beat. There is no sound, no shadow, no movement, but your body is preparing for something your conscious mind cannot name. And that feeling, that electric, wordless certainty that someone is watching you, is not a glitch. It is not anxiety. It is not your imagination. It is a 300-million-year-old surveillance system wired into a part of your brain you cannot control, running a threat detection program that was written long before you were born, long before language, long before anything that could be called human walked upright under an African sun. And the strangest part is that it works even when you're blind. Here's what no one tells you about your vision. You think you see with your eyes. You don't. Light enters your retina and splits into at least 10 separate streams feeding 10 different brain regions, each performing its own silent task. One stream handles color, another handles motion, another detects edges. Your visual cortex, that large mass at the back of your skull, stitches them together into the seamless movie you call sight. But several of those streams never touch the visual cortex at all. They run underground. They process information you will never consciously perceive, and one of them is obsessed with one thing: eyes. In 2007, developmental psychologist Michael Tomasello and his team at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig published a study in the Journal of Human Evolution that changed how we understand the human face. They called it the cooperative eye hypothesis, and the short version is this: humans are the only primates on Earth whose eyes have a large, bright white sclera. Gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, their sclera is dark, pigmented, camouflaged. Their pupils blend into their faces. You can stare at a chimpanzee and have no idea where it's looking. But a human eye, the contrast between the white sclera, the colored iris, and the black pupil creates a signal so loud it can be read from across a room. Your eyes are broadcasting. Constantly, every primate on the planet hides where it's looking. Humans evolved to advertise it. And Tomasello tested this. He had a researcher look at the ceiling using only his eyes, or only his head. Human infants followed the eyes. Apes followed the head. Our species doesn't just detect gaze. We are architecturally built to track it. We are gaze-obsessed creatures walking around with biological billboards mounted in our skulls. And there is a part of your brain that is reading those billboards every second of your waking life, even when you don't know it's happening. And this is where the story gets darker. Because in 1974, neuropsychologist Larry Weisskranz at the University of Oxford tested a patient known as DB who had undergone surgery that destroyed his visual cortex. DB was, by every clinical measure, blind. He could not see faces, he could not read, he reported seeing nothing. But when researchers asked him to guess where a light was flashing in his blind field, his guesses were accurate far more often than chance allowed. And Weisskranz coined a term for this: blindsight. DB was seeing without seeing. His eyes were still sending information to his brain, but the information was routed around the visual cortex through a subcortical pathway that ran through an ancient structure called the superior colliculus, then through the pulvinar of the thalamus and into the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, which was receiving visual data that DB's conscious mind never got access to. And then, decades later, in 2013, neuroscientist Alan Pegna at the University of Geneva studied a patient known as TN, a physician who had suffered 2 consecutive strokes that destroyed his entire visual cortex on both sides. TN was completely cortically blind. He saw nothing. He reported nothing. But when Pegna placed him in an fMRI scanner and showed him photographs of faces with eyes pointed directly at him versus faces with eyes averted, something happened that should have been impossible. TN's right amygdala lit up, specifically, powerfully, measurably. When the eyes in the photographs were looking at him, his brain knew it was being watched. His conscious mind had no idea. Let that sink in. A man who cannot see, who reports total darkness, whose visual cortex is destroyed on both sides, and still, somewhere beneath his awareness, a circuit older than conscious thought is counting the white pixels of a stranger's sclera and triggering an alarm. And this is not psychic ability. This is not a sixth sense. This is something far more unsettling. Your brain has a shadow visual system, a second parallel network that is tracking eyes in your environment before your conscious mind even processes the scene, and it is biased, profoundly, evolutionarily biased, because in 2002, researchers at Dartmouth published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences showing that when the signal is ambiguous, when it's unclear whether someone is looking at you or slightly past you, your brain defaults to, "They're looking at me." Every time, it overestimates direct gaze. It would rather falsely detect a threat than miss a real one, and evolutionary psychologists Marty Hazelton and David Buss have a name for this: error management theory. And the logic is brutally simple. For millions of years, your ancestors lived as prey. They were soft, slow, clawless animals on an African savanna patrolled by leopards, hyenas, and saber-toothed cats. At Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, paleontologists have found hominin skulls with puncture marks that match the canine spacing of a leopard. Our ancestors were hunted, and the ones who survived were not the strongest. They were the most paranoid. The cost of a false alarm, a spike of adrenaline, a wasted burst of vigilance, is almost nothing. A few calories, a few seconds of heightened attention. But the cost of missing a real predator is death, extinction, a bloodline erased. So the system was calibrated to over-detect, to see eyes in shadows, to feel watched in empty rooms, to fire the alarm 100 times for nothing rather than stay silent the one time it mattered. And this is the feeling in your bedroom at 2 a.m. This is the prickle on the back of your neck in a dark parking lot. Your amygdala has detected something, a pattern of light, a suggestion of symmetry, the faintest cue that something with eyes might be oriented in your direction. And it has done what it was built to do 300 million years before you were born. It has flooded your body with norepinephrine. It has widened your pupils. It has shifted your attention. And it has done all of this before a single photon of that information reached your conscious awareness. You felt watched before you knew why. Because knowing why was never the point. Surviving was. But there is one more layer to this, and it might be the part that stays with you. Because your brain doesn't just detect gaze, it remembers the hits and forgets the misses. Every time you turn around and someone is there, every time you glance up on a train and lock eyes with a stranger, that moment is stamped into your memory with the full neurochemical weight of a confirmed threat. Your amygdala says, "I was right." But all the times you turned around and no one was there, those evaporate. They carry no emotional charge. They trigger no memory consolidation, and the result is a profound confirmation bias. You remember the times you were right, you forget the times you were wrong, and so you build a personal mythology, a quiet, private belief that you can sense when you're being watched. You can't, but your brain has made it feel like you can, because that feeling, that false, beautiful, paranoid feeling, kept your ancestors alive long enough to make you. And in 2001, Swedish neuroscientist Arne Öhman at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm published a landmark paper showing that humans detect snakes and threatening faces faster than any other visual stimulus. Faster than flowers, faster than geometric shapes, faster than anything neutral. The detection happens before conscious recognition. The amygdala fires before the visual cortex finishes processing. You react before you see. You flinch before you understand. Your body is living a few hundred milliseconds in the future, running on a threat map that was drawn by something that died 1,000,000 years ago but left its fear inside your cells. So tonight, when you turn off the light and lie in that darkness and feel the weight of unseen attention pressing against the back of your head, that is not a ghost. That is not a flaw. That is every ancestor who ever froze in tall grass at the sound of something breathing nearby. Every primate that slept in a tree and woke to yellow eyes below. Every soft-bodied creature that learned to feel before it could think. They are all still inside you, still scanning, still counting the whites of eyes that may not be there. Because you were never afraid of the dark. You were afraid of what might be looking back. And after 300 million years, your brain still refuses to take the chance that nothing is.